with Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. Leading the news tonight, Diane Abbott has confirmed that she does intend to run as a candidate for the Labour Party in July's general election. That's after speculation that she may have been choosing to stand down. The veteran MP's taken to social media tonight to say that she is the adopted Labour candidate for the seat that she's held since 1987. Well, it comes after Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said that Diane Abbott was free to go forward as a Labour candidate, making those comments on Friday, ending days of speculation about her future. And staying with Labour, migration has been at the forefront of their election campaigning today. That's after they accused the Conservatives of repeatedly breaking promises to get the number down. Sir Keir Starmer's promising to tackle net migration if he wins the election in July, with new laws that he says will train British workers and plug gaps in the jobs market. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, he said last year's figure of 685,000 people has to come down. But his Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told us this morning that it wouldn't be wise to set a time frame or a target figure.
Well, net migration has trebled in the last 5 years under the Conservatives. One of the biggest drivers of that has been work migration. We're not setting a target, a specific target on it. And the reason for that is partly because the Conservatives have just effectively ripped up all the targets that they've set over many years. They've discredited the whole process. But also, more importantly, because there are short-term factors that can affect the numbers. And what we think instead is we need to have a long-term approach that is about bringing net migration down and tackling the failings in the system.
Yvette Cooper there speaking to us this morning. Well, the Conservatives on their campaign trail have said they would free up 20 million GP appointments by the end of the next Parliament if they return into power. They're promising 100 new GP surgeries across the country and to modernise 150 others. They're also pledging to expand their Pharmacy First scheme and say those plans would be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers back to pre-pandemic levels. Health Secretary Victoria Adkins spoke to us today and she said that they are working to make the NHS better.
My job as Health Secretary, for example, is to explain our vision for our NHS, which is to reform it to make it faster, simpler and fairer. And some of the announcements I have today concerning GP surgeries, concerning Pharmacy First and community diagnostic centres are the ways that we will help deliver that over the coming years. We are going to fund this. It's fully funded. We're going to fund it partly through a reduction of managers in the NHS.
And in Scotland, the SNP launched their election campaign in Glasgow today, accusing Labour and the Conservatives of failing the Scottish people. First Minister John Swinney told a crowd that people in Scotland want rid of what he called the disastrous, chaotic Conservative government. He also spoke about independence under the SNP, saying that it would allow the country to make its own decisions and it would enhance the lives of Scottish people.
And it's the people of Scotland that I want to speak to directly today as we set out our message. Let me make this commitment to the people of Scotland. I am here to serve you all. I am here to work hard to win your trust and your confidence. I am here to give everything I have to secure the best future for our country.
And some sports news for you now. Prince William has praised Rob Burrow tonight as a legend of rugby league with, he says, a huge heart. That's after the former England international and charity fundraiser died aged 41. He was diagnosed with motor neurons disease in 2019 before being awarded a CBE for helping raise millions of pounds to promote awareness for the MND condition. His diagnosis came just 2 years after he retired from playing in the rugby league, following a 17-year career, including 8 grand final wins. He spent that entire career playing for Leeds Rhinos, who announced the news tonight, saying he was an inspiration to the entire country. The Metropolitan Police has confirmed that 56 people were arrested at Wembley last night at the Champions League final. Thousands of football fans were at the stadium to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. Police say 5 people were arrested for pitch invasion and dozens of others for attempting to breach security. Well, the FA has now confirmed that no one who tried to get into the stadium without a ticket was successful. North Korea has launched what's being described as a bizarre barrage of balloons filled with rubbish, cigarette butts and suspected animal poo floating towards its southern neighbour. More than 700 balloons have been found in various parts of South Korea, with chemical and explosive clearance teams dispatched to recover some debris. The South Korean government are calling it a dirty provocation from the north. However, Pyongyang says it's in retaliation for defectors and activists who often send their own inflatables across the border, containing leaflets, food, medicine and sometimes USB sticks loaded with K-pop videos. And finally, before we hand back to Mark, tonight we've heard that media mogul Rupert Murdoch has married for the 5th time at the age of 93, tying the knot with retired Russian molecular biologist Alina Zhukova at his California vineyard. These wedding photos you can see here if you're watching on television show Mr. Murdoch in his black suit with a yellow tie, beaming alongside his new 67-year-old wife. It comes after his brief engagement to Anne Leslie Smith ended just a year ago. Well, his global media empire began in the 1950s and includes The Sun, The Wall Street Journal and, of course, Fox News. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. I'll be back with another update for you at 10 o'clock. Until then, do sign up to GB News Alerts. You can scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam. Tonight's show is dedicated to Rob Burrow, a true greatest Briton. May he rest in peace. Welcome to a busy Mark Dolan tonight. In the big story, would a shift to the right save the Tories? Former Government Minister Edwina Currie and the director of the Popular Conservatives will do battle. In my take at 10, as speculation grows that he may run for a seat, Nigel Farage has 5 days to decide. The clock is ticking. I'll be giving my verdict on whether he should or should not at 10. Plus, will the smaller parties influence the outcome of the election? I'll be joined by the leader of one such party, and my Mark Meets guest is surely the most important man in Britain. Mr. Pothole has devoted his life to patching up Britain's roads. He tells his fantastic story before 10. That's if he doesn't get a flat tyre on the way or do his suspension. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel, Mark Littlewood, Claire Pearsall and Chris Wilde. Plus, the most important part of the show, your messages, your emails, they come straight to my laptop, gbnews.com/your say. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come. Nigel Farage at 10. Should he run? My verdict. But first, my big opinion. As extremist parties across Europe continue to rise, ironically, in Eurozone countries like Italy and France rather than Brexit Britain, not addressing the public's real concerns comes at a high political price. Which is why all of the parties fighting it out in this general election must do a lot less talking and take up the art of listening. A lot of it is obvious: a more efficient and effective NHS, more GP appointments, a shorter waiting list, faster A&E, safer streets, better schools, an economy that works for everyone, and tackling the scandal of in-work poverty. The cost of living has got to be tackled, slaying the dragon of inflation and getting interest rates down so that people can spend money in the economy rather than keeping a roof over their heads. Plus, we've got to build, baby, build. The list goes on. None of these policies are controversial, and I'm confident that they will be pursued with vigour and creativity by whoever gets in. But there is an elephant in the room so large that London Zoo could not accommodate it: immigration. The main parties have shied away from this issue for so long, for reasons of political correctness, for fear of being called xenophobic, a bigot, or worse. But addressing the current numbers, which both Labour and the Conservatives have this week acknowledged are too high, is essential in order to sustain a good quality of life for our existing rich and diverse society. How legal net migration of 700,000, a city the size of Leeds, every year helps poor people or minority communities in Britain is anyone's guess, because it clearly doesn't. It's obvious to everyone, well, everyone except our actual politicians and well-heeled, out-of-touch figures in the media, that those numbers are going to impact housing, the health service, school places, the welfare bill, and our transport infrastructure, plus the small matter of integration, which is critical for a successful society. Plus, with the inevitable downward pressure on wages and rising rents, as an extra 700,000 people every year have to live somewhere, it will hit the poorest most hard. Politicians can't run away from the truth forever. In the end, it will catch up with them, as it did with the establishment when Brexit happened in 2016. Very few saw that coming, but it was a cry for help from ordinary people who felt that the political establishment were living on another planet, insulated from the real-world consequences of their policies and dismissive of the concerns and needs of the great unwashed. In the end, Brexit was one in the eye to the media, the political and the corporate elites, who did everything they could to stop it. But just as the truth will out, so the popular will shall prevail. Maybe not at this election, but soon. If all the parties continue to promise action on illegal migrant crossings, which are a national security, humanitarian and economic disaster, and unsustainable levels of legal net migration, which even the woke Archbishop of Canterbury acknowledges are too high, then smaller, more extremist and outlandish voices will gain popularity. This must not happen. The real risk at the moment is that the public will disengage from the democratic process altogether, as they take the view that voting just doesn't work. And that takes us to a potentially very dark place. The main parties all have valid points on immigration. The Tories say that they will crack down on the abuse of student visas. Labour have said they want to get Brits working rather than relying on imported foreign workers. And the Lib Dems promise to tackle the asylum backlog. All good stuff. And the SNP and the Greens are absolutely right to point out that immigration should not be framed as the source of all of our problems, or for immigrants themselves to be demonised. Far from it. Sensible levels of immigration are a very good thing and highly welcome. Immigration is critical to our economic and cultural success, and I say that as the son of Irish immigrant parents myself. Labour today would not say what level of numbers that they would like to achieve, and the Tories are similarly reticent. Well, if you don't have a target, you're never going to hit it. So all of the parties should have an honest conversation over the next few weeks with the public about what a good number might be. For immigration, like everything else, the dosage is the poison. A pint of water is very good for you. 20 pints of water is not. Politicians are uncomfortable talking about immigration. Tough luck. The public are not, including black and minority ethnic Brits, who are just as concerned about the impact of these unchecked numbers on their own lives and on the country that they love. Whether the politicians like it or not, this is the immigration election. Ignore that at your peril. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your responses shortly. But first, tonight's top pundits. We have leading political commentator Mark Littlewood. We also have former government advisor Claire Pearsall. And last but not least, a very old friend of mine, campaigner and author Chris Wilde. Sorry, folks, it's taking me longer and longer to get across that studio. I'm showing my age, Mark Littlewood. The elephant in the room is immigration. Yes, Labour have talked about it today. The Tories have talked about it for quite a while. But we need action, not words. Otherwise, the public will turn off democracy altogether.
Yeah, I agreed with nearly everything you said, Mark. It is the elephant in the room. I don't think it is being ignored. I just don't think it's being dealt with properly. And it gets quite complicated. You've got to break up legal migration with asylum seekers. You can talk about the numbers, for sure, but I think you could also talk about the type. I don't think people would have too many problems if they were, say, 200,000 multi-millionaires coming into the country every year, paying full taxes and creating jobs. But 200,000 people coming in who are, say, all welfare claimants, they might have a problem with. It's obviously not as black and white as that. So we've got to parcel it out. And I hear the argument that you've got to aim at a target. I even had a Conservative spin doctor trying to claim to me the other day that they hadn't broken their promise, that they'd got it down to tens of thousands. It was just that it was now 70 tens of thousands, which seemed to me a
By the
bit
way,
thin.
where did you meet that Conservative spin doctor? Was he drinking heavily in a bar somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. Well, many Conservative spin doctors probably are at the moment. But I think that parties of all stripes need to set out not so much, here's our target, but how they're going to do it.
It's the entire political establishment, isn't it? This isn't Tories, Labour, Lib Dem, it's all of them.
Yes, and there's a lot of wishful thinking that if you say we'll get the numbers down, unless you spell out in precise detail how you're going to enforce the system. I mean, the enforcement is pathetic at the moment. It takes, 18 months for a standard asylum claim? It should take 18 days, I would have thought, something like that. And on legal migration, I think the number that parties need to conjure with is this. On average, it is only a statistical average, if you divide the total cost of government in Britain between all the people here, it's £14,000 per person per year. That should basically be the membership fee. Right. If you want to come in and work as an IT consultant, for example, we'll need £14,000. That obviously varies with age and all those sorts of things. But that's where I think we need to get to. That's the cost of government. All of the things you listed, Mark, in your monologue were government services that were struggling. You know, schools, hospitals, infrastructure. Well, if people coming in are paying more than their fair share, then the government should have more than enough money to improve our schools, hospitals and transport infrastructure. So I want politicians not just to say, we'll do something about it, our target is this, but to spell out to the electorate exactly how.
You don't want a number either, because you also, I would imagine, want to listen to what business need and also the public sector, the care sector, the NHS, and maybe look at it on its strength every year of what the country needs. But what about, Claire Pearsall, a cap? Would that be popular? And should this be cross-party? Why is it separated among Labour, Lib Dem and Tories? Why can't they agree on a figure?
Yeah, caps don't work. That's the real reality of this. We saw it under Theresa May's administration.
But she never got there, though, did she?
No, but we did. We had different caps for different visa types. Now, remember, the system was different.
You served in the Home Office, didn't you?
I certainly did. And we had something called Tier 2 visas, which encompassed healthcare professionals and things like that.
Yeah.
And there was a limit on the amount of people that could come in. Now, the NHS had a crisis. It needed to recruit more people. They had reached the cap. So then you have to do an awful lot of fiddling around the edges. You have to not look as if you're lifting the cap. You have to create slightly different barriers and different visa types.
So you cook the books?
Basically, that's what you have to do, because if you go to the public and say, yeah, we promised you tens of thousands and we've bust that by 5,000, 10,000, be it, whatever number you choose, then everyone's going to go, but you failed. That was awful. But it was the needs of the NHS, it was the needs of the agriculture sector. So I think you set yourself up to fail the minute you start to put a cap on it. It isn't as simple as saying we will only allow 50,000 nurses, we will only allow 20,000 fruit pickers. Whatever it is, you set yourself up to fail at that point. And I think from the public's point of view, that's worse.
OK, very briefly, couple of seconds, what is the answer? You're Prime Minister, congratulations. Is there a ballpark figure? You just go, well, we go from 100k to 300 roughly every year?
No, it's very similar to what Mark said. You have to look at what your business needs are, you have to look at your infrastructure, and you have to look at the money coming in.
But this doesn't sound like the change the public want.
Because it can't be achieved quickly, and it also can't be achieved at a detriment to the country. It isn't as simple as that.
Chris,
Yes.
there are other parties like the Greens, and possibly some in Labour and on the political left, who would say that actually 700,000 is a good number because actually immigration is good for our economy, it's good for our culture. We're a very welcoming country.
Yeah.
People need to make a new life. Why can't they do it in Britain?
But you know, you've got a good point. And I work on the front line. I'm in the communities all week, every day, and we start to have these conversations, especially now when we're canvassing and stuff. And it's the communities are really dysfunctional right now. They can't even look after the people who are already living there. And then we start talking about immigration and stuff like that. It's like, I think you made a valid point there, and I don't know what you do with respect to what you do, but I think you've got to have a clear and concise plan, and no party really has that at the moment. They don't know what they're doing, and you've got to focus on what's happening right here in the moment. We've got communities who are starving, you've got people who are being made homeless, you've got people going into the care sector, you've got people who can't go to school because there's no schools in that community. There is it's so dysfunctional right now, then all we're talking about is immigration.
But Chris, does it help poverty in Britain to have an extra 700k per year of people coming in?
Not at the moment, because we can't even fix what's happening right here on the streets.
So you think that mass migration does impact poor people in this country?
Of course it does, if you don't have a clear and concise plan, which no party does to deal with it.
OK, briefly, Mark.
Well, I think the key thing is, are these people net beneficiaries or net contributors to the economy?
That's the question.
And if the British people were confident that the people coming in were net contributors to the exchequer and the economy, then I think an awful lot of the worries would
And of course, that was the idea about Brexit, is that we would have the world's finest. Is it going to happen? Do you have faith? gbnews.com/your say. My brilliant pundits are coming in hot tonight. Let me tell you, they are on fire. And they return shortly. Next up in the big story, should the Tories shift to the right to boost their election chances? Former Government Minister Edwina Currie and Mark Little, with my top pundit tonight, who is the director of the Popular Conservatives, will do battle. That's next.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Apparently alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol. I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption. But revealed, alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So this cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? Like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up.
Yeah.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, that's the topic of my big opinion. The elephant in the room this election is immigration. Ignore it at your peril is my message to the political establishment. I'll get to your feedback on that shortly. But first, the big story, and it seems with divisions in the Labour Party over the treatment of Diane Abbott, the Tories are indulging in their own mini civil war. With figures in the popular Conservatives movement, including Annunciata Rees-Mogg, issuing a plan for policies that they want included in Rishi Sunak's election manifesto. They include leaving the European Convention on Human Rights in order to unlock the Rwanda plan, reform the Bank of England, abolish the Office for Budget Responsibility, scrap net zero, and reduce corporate tax rates, income tax, stamp duty, and remove inheritance tax altogether. So will Rishi Sunak go for any of these options, and could they save the Conservatives with just 5 weeks to go? Or is this Tories fighting like rats in a sack to inevitable defeat? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome former Conservative Government Minister Edwina Currie and one of my pundits tonight, the director of the popular Conservative movement, Mark Littlewood. Mark, I'll come to you in a moment, but Edwina Currie, would this shift to the right help Rishi Sunak?
Well, I wonder where Annunciata Rees-Mogg, goodness, but what a moniker. I wonder where she's been recently, and particularly during the shortest serving prime ministership of Liz Truss, because a lot of that stuff was exactly what Liz Truss was saying, cut taxes, go for growth, all that kind of thing. The trouble is that people like that also want to increase spending on all sorts of other things, and the money would have to come from borrowing. The reaction of the international markets, of course, is to shove up interest rates. Everybody right now is paying higher mortgages than they would have done if Liz Truss hadn't opened her mouth in exactly the same way and said all that stuff a couple of years ago. And Rishi Sunak's job would have been an awful lot easier. You know, one of the things the Tories have been known for in the past is good economic management, not for making kind of teenage debating points, knowing perfectly well that you're never going to be in a position where you're going to have to do it. Oh, and by the way, can I say hello to Mark? I remember being in Bosnia with him back in the days when he was very much involved with the European movement and with, wasn't it the Liberal Democrats, or have I forgotten that wrongly?
It's been quite the journey, Mark. And as you were listening to Edwina Currie, you were shaking your head there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that, I mean, interest rates have gone up all over the world. I don't think Liz Truss's mini-budget impacted the European markets or America. Interest rates were always going to correct to normal. I have changed my mind on a lot of things, but I think that the Conservatives should be pointing out this. If you like, the country has moved really quite dramatically to the left, I would say, over the past 10 or 20 years. Even under a Conservative government, we've got taxes at their highest rate since the 1940s, public spending at an all-time high, new regulations coming out pretty much every day. My worry is that your average voter will think, well, if I want high taxes, high regulation, and yet more state spending, I might as well vote for the full fat version, and that's the Labour Party. I think we do need to tackle a good number of institutions which I think are basically biased against Conservative goals. I don't think that's a teenage debating point. I think one of the lessons of this period of Conservative government is we too readily accepted the institutional infrastructure that Tony Blair embedded, and we said, we'll just work with that grain.
OK.
And I fear that grain works against Conservative ends.
Edwina Currie, Rishi Sunak is full of surprises. No one saw the July election date coming, did they? So do you think it's possible that he might adopt some of these policies, such as, for example, ditching the ECHR to make Rwanda a reality?
Well, I think we all want lower taxes, and that's very much an objective. And I certainly would like to see lower public spending, but I think anyone that's advocating that has got to be very clear about where they want to cut public spending. And it's not enough just to cut the Office of Budget Responsibility. That'll save enough to buy, you know, like 3 school dinners. To do it on a serious basis, you have to do what Margaret Thatcher did, and it took her a long time to do it, which is actually to shrink the size of the state in a very meaningful way. And you cannot do it overnight. We really need to have a decade of power in order to be able to do that properly. As for some of the slightly odder things that are being suggested, no, because I think in the end that would split the party. And I'm sure Mark will agree with me that whatever else gets elected, it isn't a divided party. In fact, I would wish that people like Mark and Annunziata and her dad and all their brothers and sisters would get involved in actually supporting Rishi Sunak, and we might actually have an opportunity of clawing back in the polls and of actually winning some seats.
OK, Mark, listen, do you think there's a chance that Rishi Sunak might drop the microphone and surprise a few people with his manifesto? Perhaps he's having a look through your suggestions with keen interest.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, you might say he's been quite brave on policy announcements. You can decide what you think of them. Quadruple locking the state pension, quite expensive in public spending terms. Bringing back national service. I'm not totally sure I'm persuaded of that either, but these are at least radical ideas. But I do agree with Edwina on this. I think that a broad-based party needs to put forward a range of ideas, but I've been unequivocal in my support for Rishi Sunak. I think it was ludicrous that people were trying to get rid of him as our Prime Minister. But in a broad-based party, you need to be put forward ideas. And it seems to me at the moment that to get a bit of momentum, the first thing that the Conservatives have got to do is to win back a block of those reform voters, who I think stand for the sort of things that I've put forward and Annunziata has put forward in her newspaper article today. That doesn't transform things overnight, but just getting 3, 4, 5% of them back into the Tory column, that might be the momentum we need. I think some of the ideas I put forward would get you that momentum.
Edwina, we're going to go back to your discipline at 5 Live. A few seconds, if you could. First of all, this is like Christmas for Keir Starmer. Tories divided going into an election. But what would you put in that manifesto that could move the dial for Rishi Sunak?
Oh, I think I would remind everybody what a competent and thorough and decent bloke Rishi is, that we have a very good team. At least those that are planning to stay in Parliament, and that, you know, if they're not careful, they're going to end up with a socialist government. And that is not something that has been a success in recent decades. It's always led to trouble. It's always led to more inflation. It's always led to the payment coming from your pockets in the end. One way or another, you end up much less well off with a socialist government. That is an absolute certainty. They're very good indeed at spending money, as long as it's not theirs.
Edwina, great to see you. We'll catch up very soon. Mark Littlewood returns in just a few minutes as well. Let's be clear that Labour would argue, look at the polls. It's clear that Britain is ready for a change. Plus, they have said that they're going to fix the economy. I should also add that the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has denied that she's a socialist. She said, I am a social democrat. But look, Mark Dolan tonight, the home of diverse opinion. What's yours? gbnews.com/your say. Next up, with smaller parties growing in their influence, could they impact the outcome of the election? We'll be joined by a leader of one such party next. See you in 2.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we've seen plenty of fine weather over the weekend. However, this week is going to be turning more unsettled and a little bit cooler. For today, though, we have had high pressure dominating the weather over the UK, but we have had this frontal system move into the northwest and a slight squeeze in those isobars too, so turning damp and rather windy. It is gradually going to be clouding over from the north through into this evening, staying clearest for longest across the south. And we will start to see some outbreaks of rain and drizzle continue to move their way into northwestern areas. So turning a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the south, but for most, a rather mild night and most places not dropping below double digits. So to start on Monday, there will be a little bit of brightness in the south, but as I say, it will gradually cloud over through the course of the morning, staying largely dry though. However, we will start to see some rain and drizzle move its way into northwestern England, northern parts of Wales, and quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, still with that rain and drizzle, but brightening up through the morning across parts of Aberdeenshire, and there will be some sunny spells across the Northern Isles, but plenty of showers in between those spells of sunshine. Overall, on Monday, it is going to be a rather cloudy picture, still with those spots of rain and drizzle in the northwest. By the time we reach the afternoon, it may brighten up a little bit across central and southern UK, but most of the sunshine is going to be across Scotland. However, quite a blustery day on offer there, so that will just take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. But in those sheltered spots where you catch the sunshine, it should still be feeling warm. Now, as we head into Tuesday, we are going to see a bit of a change. Further rain moving in from the northwest, quite blustery, and plenty of showers behind too. However, it will still be staying dry across the south and southeast and still feeling warm where you do catch any sunnier spells, but cooler across Scotland, particularly in that wind. And as we head into next week, fairly unsettled, largely dry in the south, but it is going to be feeling largely cool.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
My Mark Meets guest is surely the most important man in Britain, Mr. Pothole, tackling Britain's ruined roads. He'll tell his amazing story in just a few minutes. But first, whether it's the Greens, Reform UK, the Lib Dems, UKIP, or popular independent politicians, will smaller parties influence the outcome of the general election? Well, hoping they do is the leader of the SDP, William Clouston, who joins me now. William, great to see you. What is the key message of your campaign this year?
We're trying to offer the public what they actually want, because we agree with the majority of people on this. What do they want? They want affordable homes. They want a safe place to raise a family. They want a secure national border. And most of them want to end mass immigration. And because our views align, we're just offering them what people actually want.
Yes, and this is unfashionable for a party of the left, which people forget, the SDP. I think it's fair to say that it's sceptical about wokeism and extreme political correctness, traditional family values, perhaps small c conservative, but a party of the left nonetheless.
Yeah, but having some left-wing economics is actually a better fit for conservatism. The problem with the Conservatives are about to find out, and it's taken them about 30 years, is that hard market economics is that not conservative at all. We've deindustrialised, we've gutted our industry, we've sold off all our utilities. People talk to us about this a lot. You know, most people don't want our water industry or our railways run by foreign states. It says basics, doesn't it? They don't want that. So actually our offer, I'm very, very confident I should be the happiest leader of any political party, because I speak to the public. Most of them already agree with us. That's the thing.
And what does success look like for you on July the 4th? Because let's not forget we have first past the post, which works against you. So what are you aiming for?
Last election, we had 20 candidates. I'm hoping for over 100, which would be a big increase for us. If we get over 100, we get a party election broadcast, which we're working on, hoping we get that. It's not sure.
I hear you've been in studio today.
Outside.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, and it'll take a bit of doing. If we get that, we'll make a major breakthrough, because people will see it and find out about us. Again, I'm very confident we do much, much better than we did last time. That's all you can do as a small party. We've also got key target seats. Rod Liddle, Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland.
Brilliant broadcaster and journalist, man of the people.
Yeah, he'll do very well. Dan Whetstone, South Leeds, very, very well. You know, David Bettany, Donny North, very well.
OK, well, listen, let me ask my top pundits about what they think. Do you think, Claire, that smaller parties will influence the outcome? Because in seats where it's tight for the Tories or Labour, perhaps Reform UK, perhaps the Greens, perhaps the SDP could squeeze the vote.
I think it's really difficult because it takes a long time for a party to become encompassed in everybody's minds. Also, do you find it difficult with the administration and the amount of money? Because elections aren't cheap. Candidacy is not cheap. Is that something that you think goes against you?
It does. I mean, we could always do with more money, and we're funded by ourselves. I mean, one of the advantages of the party is we're not in the pockets of the unions or big business. We are literally funded by our own members, which means we can say what's true. It's a major advantage.
I mean, are you essentially treading water until PR comes in, proportional representation?
No, because I mean, our model is like the Green model. We don't share all of their politics by any means, but the model, the building a party takes time, and you've got to have a base, and our base is South. One of them is South Leeds. Now, it took us about 4 or 5 years to take a big city council seat off Labour. These seats have never been anything but Labour, Mark. So we took one 3 years ago. We haven't lost one since. Took the first, took the second, took the third. That's what you need to build it up from scratch, literally, at the neighbourhood level almost. If you do that, you put down roots. You literally can go to the summit from there. It's very, very difficult. But
yeah, I mean, pro-industry, pro-Brexit, pro-traditional family values, anti-woke, pro-patriotism. Aren't you closet Tories?
Well, no, because actually on the economics, I did a hustings the other day in Hexham, and I was against 3 candidates, Green, the usual. I was by far the most left-wing on economics. I think these are basics.
And what would that be, state intervention?
State intervention in the housing market.
Government loans?
The big thing, people talk about the housing crisis. I know what people blither on about it. It's not about, planning. It's about...
Blither wrong about it.
No, it's not about planning.
The terminology is quite...
No, it's not about planning. Right. That's the point I'm making. It's not about planning system. It's about the state capacity being ruined. Both Labour and the Tories ruined state capacity in house building. We will start that again. You've got to get the state back in the business. There's no good sitting...
But we know that house building is eye-wateringly expensive.
It is.
How are you going to pay for that? We can't borrow any more money, can we?
No, by taxing planning gain. At the moment, a greenfield site, it gets planning consent, and the massive increase in value all goes to the developer or the landowner. We're not greedy. We'll take half of that. The state will take half of that. 50%. So we would raise £8 billion, and you'd house hundreds of thousands of British people.
Chris Wilde.
I mean, I've spoken to you briefly outside, and when you talk about a new party, I'm always concerned about my line of work, which is the care sector. Got 100,000 people, 150,000 young people going into care every year. It's not decreasing, it's increasing. No party's come up with a plan of action to do this. We've got an independent care review with some recommendations, and no party even wants to acknowledge that. More and more young people are taken to the streets, groomed into criminal organisations. We're seeing a catastrophe on our streets. As a leader of a new party, what would the answer be to that?
It's an old party, 1981.
One making its
we want
waves.
a national care service.
Okay.
Basically, Andy Burnham is right about this. And if someone's right in a different party, he's right in public transport as well.
Right.
You need a national care service. You've got to get rid of this chaos, basically, of patchy provisions, and the NHS does this bit, this local authority does this, and we're not getting a universal service for all citizens. Treat people on a par, create a national care service. That's what we need.
But that is all going to cost money. Where is that going to come from?
Well, it's going to cost about £6 or £7 billion, and you can't afford not to do it, and you can't afford not to...
But where's the cash coming from?
Well, we're going to tax it. We're going to tax multinationals.
Okay, so
we're going to tax multinationals who siphon profits off to Dublin. We're going to tax them on turnover here. We will raise the money for that easily by that route. But, if you want to do something like this, if you want to build some houses, or you want to solve a care problem, people will say, how are you going to pay it? A pandemic came along, they found 450 billion just like that. 38 billion.
Yeah, would you cut public spending?
No, I think the state is about... in the end, I've never argued for a massive state. I want a competent state, which is a different thing.
But it's massive already.
It's massive already because it's mopping up the blood, basically, of economic failure. I'm the only politician, I think, that talks about trade. We've got a massive trade problem. We've deindustrialised. We haven't had a surplus of trade in goods since 1982. That's the problem.
We can all agree that we want everyone to vote in the election. If it's a smaller party, what would you say to somebody that supports the SDP, the Greens, Reform UK or an independent, that it's a wasted vote. What would your answer be to that?
Vote for what you believe in.
Why?
And if you think, well, if you think that a smaller party, if you believe in the things that a smaller party believes in, it'll never become a bigger one if you don't vote for it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, ask you the other question: Have we been well governed by these two parties? The answer is no. Everyone knows it.
Of course, they would defend their record, but William, enjoy yourself. It's a 6-week campaign. There's been no sort of sitting around. It's just straight into action.
Yep.
And so have fun with it. Are you any good at kissing babies?
Try. I mean, yeah.
All right. Do you know what you can do? Practice on Chris during the break. He's baby-like. very lovable.
Young looks.
Very lovable, and he wears a nappy. OK, listen, I will tell you that William mentioned a couple of candidates, which means that I will now tell you who the candidates are for Hexham, and it is Joe Morris, Labour, Guy Opperman, Conservatives, for the Lib Dems, Nick Gott, Nick Morfitt for the Greens, and William Clouston for the Social Democratic Party. In Middlesbrough South, Luke Meyer for Labour, Simon Clarke, Conservative, Gemma Joy, Lib Dem, Rowan McLaughlin, Greens, and Rod Liddle, Social Democrat. And Leeds South, Hilary Benn, Labour, Ed Carlisle, Green, George Sykes, Liberal Democrats, and Daniel Whetstone, SDP. Brilliant stuff. A fascinating conversation that was. Coming up in my take at 10, Nigel Farage. The clock is ticking. Should he run? My verdict. But first, my Mark Meets guest is surely the most important man in Britain. Mr. Pothole has devoted his life to patching up Britain's roads. He tells his incredible story next, if he doesn't get a flat tyre on the way.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
How prevalent is it in those with darker skin, like me?
That's a great question, and it's one that we get a lot. So your skin tone does affect your risk of skin cancer. People at the most risk are people with lighter skin tones, so light-coloured hair and eyes as well, lots of moles and freckles, a history of sunburn or a family history of skin cancer. But people with darker skin tones can still burn and can still get skin cancer. Anybody can get skin cancer. So I would encourage everybody, regardless of your ethnicity or your skin tone, to think really seriously about taking care when it's sunny. That myth that you've mentioned that black people can't get skin cancer is really prevalent, and that's something I want to dispel right now immediately, because more black people think maybe they can't get skin cancer. That might mean that when they spot something unusual for them, they're less likely to go to the doctor and they're diagnosed later. And when you're diagnosed later, your outcomes do tend to be worse.
So the figures are disturbing that more people are getting skin cancer. But what about outcomes? I mean, if you do get skin cancer, what are your prospects?
So yeah, like you say, this research is a mixed picture. We're seeing incidence, so the number of new cases going up, which is not good news. But there is some good news in that mortality, so whether you're going to die or not, is actually going down. And we think that's partly due to early diagnosis, which I just mentioned is so important. But also research has led to better and kinder treatments, which mean the outcomes are likely to be better. So now, if you're diagnosed at the earliest stage, stage 1, with melanoma, actually around 9 in 10 people will survive their disease for 5 years or more.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nigel Farage in my take at 10. But first, it is Mark Meets. And surely the issue that should be front and centre of this general election. It might sound more trivial than immigration, the NHS or the economy, but if there's one thing that infuriates absolutely everyone, it's potholes, hazardous, damaging to cars, motorbikes and bicycles, and visible proof of a crumbling infrastructure. Here is rock superstar Rod Stewart fixing one at the end of his street. He wears it well. Well, coming to the rescue, it's not Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer or Ed Davey. It is Mr. Pothole, the world's best-known pothole campaigner who has successfully lobbied for millions of pounds worth of resurfacing works. So could Britain become the world's first pothole-free country? I'm delighted to say that Mark Morrill, a.k.a. Mr. Pothole, joins me now. Mark, lovely to see you. What is a pothole?
That's a side of a failure in the carriageway. It's a defect. Depending on what council is, depends on the depth you required, but basically 40 millimetres deep and about 300 millimetres in diameter in any place. That's a defect that can affect particularly cyclists and cause damage. I mean, it's reported that one cyclist a week is killed or seriously injured as a result of potholes, and over 70 motorcyclists are killed or seriously injured as a result of badly maintained roads annually.
Well, indeed, it's not just potholes, is it? I ride a little moped, and it's the long sort of gorge that you get in a road, sometimes a sort of straight line with a gap in the middle, like a valley.
Yeah, that's a failure of a joint where the two surfaces have been joined. You get failure in there because you get water breaking down. Anywhere there's a joint that allows ingress into the actual defect can cause major problems.
What is the best way to fix a pothole, Mark?
For a permanent repair, you need to actually cut out the area of the pothole plus probably about 300, 400 millimetres around where the defect is, clean it all out, use a tack coat, put in a bituminous hot material, compact it correctly, and overband and seal the edges. That's the best way to do a permanent repair. But repairing potholes is a waste of money. We need to resurface our roads year on year, annually. That's the only way we're going to break this cycle of potholes on our road. Decades of underinvestment by governments and authorities has led to us having a £16.3 billion carriageway backlog in England and Wales. And we've got over a £6 billion backlog in bridge maintenance.
Oh, that's an absolute scandal. And can you tell me how much it's costing motorists in damaged tyres and suspension?
Well, it's reckoned that badly maintained roads are costing the UK economy £14.4 billion a year. So I can't understand why government and authorities don't understand economically it's better to invest in our roads, do an annual resurfacing programme, rather than being 37th in the world for a G7 nation in terms of our quality of our roads. Let's go up. We should be in the top 10, really. Yeah. It takes some time to do it. And also I've worked with a guy that has been a very good follower of mine for years called Dave Gaster. We worked on a thing called Curing Pothole Britain that gives an insight into what could be done. So any political party that wants to know about it, and if, whatever government gets in there, more than willing to give them the advice that I think they need. It's whether they want to actually take it on, Mark.
Only a couple of seconds. First of all, you founded National Pothole Day. When is it?
That's the 15th of January each year. It's got a life of its own. And one, I suppose, iconic thing was I took an orange tank around Parliament Square trying to catch Boris on National Pothole Day. But actually, we were held up on the Westway getting the tank into London because of a pothole. You can't make these things
You couldn't make it up. And listen, how can people find out more about your campaign?
You can find me on social media, particularly Twitter. So that's at Mr. Pothole UK, and I'm also on Facebook. The other thing I've been doing is using AI, development of AI, so people can download a free app on their phone and they can survey it, and it's producing some brilliant information that the authorities probably won't like.
There you go.
It's real information.
Brilliant stuff. Check out Mr. Pothole online. Marky, thank you so much and keep up the good work. More power to you. How long have we got, folks? Next up, should he run for high office? That's right. Should Nigel Farage pursue a seat in the House of Commons? I'll be giving my verdict next.
feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we've seen plenty of fine weather over the weekend. However, this week is going to be turning more unsettled and a little bit cooler. For today, though, we have had high pressure dominating the weather over the UK, but we have had this frontal system move into the northwest and a slight squeeze in those isobars too, so turning damp and rather windy. It is gradually going to be clouding over from the north through into this evening, staying clearest for longest across the south. And we will start to see some outbreaks of rain and drizzle continue to move their way into northwestern areas. So turning a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the south, but for most, a rather mild night and most places not dropping below double digits. So to start on Monday, there will be a little bit of brightness in the south, but as I say, we'll gradually cloud over through the course of the morning, staying largely dry though. However, we will start to see some rain and drizzle move its way into northwestern England, northern parts of Wales, and quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, still with that rain and drizzle, but brightening up through the morning across parts of Aberdeenshire, and there will be some sunny spells across the Northern Isles, but plenty of showers in between those spells of sunshine. Overall on Monday, it is going to be a rather cloudy picture, still with those spots of rain and drizzle in the northwest. By the time we reach the afternoon, it may brighten up a little bit across central and southern UK, but most of the sunshine is going to be across Scotland. However, quite a blustery day on offer there, so that will just take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. But in those sheltered spots where you catch the sunshine, it should still be feeling warm. Now, as we head into Tuesday, we are going to see a bit of a change. Further rain moving in from the northwest, quite blustery and plenty of showers behind too. However, it will still be staying dry across the south and southeast and still feeling warm where you do catch any sunnier spells, but cooler across Scotland, particularly in that wind. And as we head into next week, fairly unsettled, largely dry in the south, but it is going to be feeling largely cool.
Looks like things.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually, it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In My Take at 10, as speculation grows he may run for a seat, Nigel Farage has 5 days to decide. The clock is ticking. I'll be giving my verdict in just a couple of minutes. Also tonight, will public anger at wokery and political correctness influence the election campaign? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, no-nonsense former government minister Anne Widdecombe. And in the last word, all the election latest from Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie. Plus, as his former boss Rupert Murdoch marries for the 5th time at 93, can you find love later in life? Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages, a packed show, lots to get through. Nigel Farage, in 2 minutes' time, should he run? That is the question. I've got the answer after the headlines with the highly electable Sam Francis.
Mark, thanks very much. Good evening to you. It's 10 o'clock. A look at the top stories tonight. Leading the news, Labour is promising to bring net migration down by encouraging businesses to hire British workers if it wins the general election. It's been at the forefront of their campaigning today after accusing the Conservatives of failing to cut the number of asylum seekers coming into the UK. Sir Keir Starmer has said that last year's net migration figure of 685,000 has to come down. Well, staying with Labour, Diane Abbott has confirmed tonight that she will run as a candidate for the party in July's general election. The veteran MP will represent Hackney North and Stoke Newington, a seat she has held for many years after speculation that she may have been choosing to stand down. She's posted on social media denying that she has been offered a seat in the House of Lords and said that she wouldn't accept one if she retired. Meanwhile, the Conservatives have been focusing on health today on the campaign trail, promising to boost community care to help make the NHS faster, simpler and, they say, fairer. The party's pledging to expand their Pharmacy First scheme and to build 50 new diagnostic centres. They say the plans would be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers to pre-pandemic levels. And the Liberal Democrats have also been focusing on health today. They've attacked the government's record, though, and they're promising to reverse £1 billion of Conservative cuts. Party leader Ed Davey says he would fund local services by cracking down on tax evasion. And he also accused the Conservatives of decimating public funding, saying that it's left Britain with what he called a ticking time bomb of health challenges. Well, in some other news tonight, former England Rugby League international and motor neurone disease fundraiser Rob Burrow has died at the age of 41. He was one of the sport's most successful players, but was diagnosed with the condition in 2019. His family say he will continue to inspire us all every day. That's after he raised millions of pounds for MND. Online tributes have been flooding in from teammates and charities over the last few hours, and a personally signed message on social media from the Prince of Wales paying tribute to Rob, describing him as a legend who had a huge heart. Well, tributes have also been paid to 29 people killed in an RAF helicopter crash at a service to mark the 30th anniversary of the disaster. The accident was controversial, with an inquiry initially blaming the pilots, but those findings were later overturned, though the cause of the crash is still unknown. 16 bereaved families have now come together to form a justice campaign group in search of answers. Some space news for you now, and a historic first Chinese flight has successfully landed on the dark side of the moon. The unmanned Chang'e 6 lunar probe is exploring a region that no country has ever managed to reach and is on a mission to collect rock and soil samples. The European Space Agency says it's a mean feat, given there's no line of sight for communication to that zone, making landing there more challenging. And finally, a couple who scooped £1 million in the lottery say that they are planning to both continue working as police officers. That's despite their life-changing win. Graham White and his wife Catherine are planning to buy their dream home in the countryside, along with some goats and chickens, each to their own. And their wish list also includes a trip to Disneyland for their children and, if they're on their best behaviour, possibly a pet dog. Well, here's what the couple had to say when they found out they'd won.
We were just waking up to get the kids ready for school, and we were talking. Graham was checking his phone because I'm boring to talk to, and then just out of the blue said, "Shut up a minute, I think we've won the lottery." So checked it, carried on just getting the kids ready for school, and at first we miscounted and thought 100,000, and we're still jumping up and down for that, and then we sort of stopped a second and recounted, and yeah, it was crazy. Absolutely ridiculous.
Congratulations to Graham and Catherine. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Will public anger at wokery and political correctness influence the election campaign? Will woke decide the election? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, no-nonsense former government minister Anne Widdecombe. Prepare to be triggered. Plus, in the last word, I'll get all of the election latest with Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie, plus as his former boss, Rupert Murdoch, marries for the 5th time at the age of 93. Can you find love later in life? Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits this evening: Mark Littlewood, Claire Pearsall and Chris Wilde. A packed hour, those papers are coming. Anne Widdecombe waiting in the wings. But first, my take at 10. Will he or won't he? Nigel Farage has just 5 more days to pull the trigger on an extraordinary political revolution. It's my view that for the sake of our democracy, and whether you love or loathe the guy, but he's got to run for a seat in the House of Commons. It's a damning verdict on our electoral system that arguably the most consequential politician of his generation, the man without whom Brexit would simply not have happened, has never sat on those famous green benches. Think of the nobodies who have achieved precisely zero and who have spent decades in the place, gorging themselves on state-subsidised parliamentary lasagna and jerk chicken, getting ripped to the backside on House of Commons white wine. Many people, potentially half of the country, cannot stand Nigel Farage. They consider him a dangerous and divisive figure who has done untold damage to this country. They are entitled to their view. But Farage's great crime, from where I'm standing, is that he simply says what millions of people think. That ought to be your ticket to high office, but in these censorious times, it's enough to get you cancelled. Nigel may be right about things, he may be wrong about things, probably both. But this high-profile figure deserves a voice in our elected chamber. Our next Parliament needs to have more diverse voices, not fewer. Which is why I think it's important that Diane Abbott, icon of the left, re-enters the Commons too. And of course, we've just broken the news that she will be running in her seat in Hackney for Labour. This election, smaller parties may come to the fore. The Greens are enjoying growing support. The Lib Dems may bounce back to their coalition glory days. Reform UK are hoping to make inroads, and we may have more disruptive independents as well. Bring it on. The duopoly of power, which Labour and the Conservatives have enjoyed for decades, which some call the Uni Party, risks being seen as disconnected from the electorate that it represents. Many would argue it works, others would argue it does not. But the truth is that I don't know anyone that's giddy with excitement about voting for any of the parties currently on offer, and that is a problem. But the likes of Farage and his counterparts on the political left should be in the House of Commons, making the case for real change in the country and doing what we try to do here at GB News, which is to widen the debates and to tackle previously untouched issues and to provide ordinary people with a voice. And it's working right here on this show. At 10 o'clock yesterday evening, Mark Dolan tonight was the head of Sky News with an audience peak of 122,000 people. And it's growing. There's an audience out there for a wider debate and an electorate out there who would dearly love to feel that the House of Commons speaks for them. It's not too much to ask, is it? The clue is in the title. Britain is a representative democracy, so it would be great if the politicians did a bit of representing. Charismatic figures from across the political spectrum should be in the House of Commons, indulging in a battle of ideas and vocalising the thoughts, hopes and dreams of voters that have sent them there. All too often, the House of Commons feels like a private members' club, populated by career politicians, lickspittles, brown-nosers, policy wonks, party insiders, sycophants and bag carriers with precious little experience of the real world. Nigel Farage has said that there's no time to set up a campaign. He doesn't have to. One tweet will do it. I'm back. And the whole country will know that he's running. You don't need all the leaflets. Save a few hundred trees. The message will be clear. The man of the people will seek to represent the people. Plus, once he's in the House of Commons, he is sitting pretty to take over the leadership of the Tories should they be annihilated, and he could bring them back from the ashes after the election. Farage has 5 days left to spark another political revolution. Like Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League final last night, if you don't take your chances, you will be punished. Look at Nigel's impact in the European Parliament as he raged at smug MEPs for over 2 decades.
You know, when I came here 17 years ago and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
I think we call that a mic drop. Who wouldn't like a bit of that in the House of Commons? Not just on the right with Nigel, but on the left, in the middle, the Greens, you name it. Let's have a bit of diversity of opinion rather than career politicians. So Nigel famously appeared on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, but it's time now for him to enter the political jungle. And while he's in there, he might even drain the swamp. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. The Conservatives would argue they don't need any help from Nigel Farage and that they're going to perform very well in the election on the 4th of July. Labour, of course, say the polls are clear. It's time for change. The Lib Dems are expecting success. The Greens have got their own case to make. The SNP, you name it. What's important is that you vote. But don't you think that Nigel should be in the mix? Do let me know your thoughts. I'll get to your opinions in a moment. But first, tonight's top pundits. Political commentator Mark Littlewood, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, and author and social work campaigner Chris Wilde. Let me start with you, Claire Pearsall. Nigel, to run or not to run? That is the question. The clock is ticking. He's got 5 days to decide.
And if he was going to do it, he would have made his mind up and he would have done it already. I think a lot of this is just trumpeting his own success, his own personality, his own particular brand of populism. And we mustn't forget that he had 7 opportunities to become a parliamentarian and he didn't make any of them. And that dates back for some years.
Isn't that our broken electoral system rather than his failings?
Well, I think it's probably a part of both. He didn't ensure that the electorate was along with him for the ride. Yes, his name is well known, he is well known, but it didn't follow through at the ballot box. And I think that there is a reason for that people just weren't sure. And would he really want to go and sit in the Commons, potentially in opposition, where it is a long, hard slog, where to get anything done is impossible? If you're telling me that he would sit there and go through all of that with the potential to take over the leadership of a party he has wished to be decimated, then I really think that you're barking up the wrong tree there, Mark.
Well, listen, let me ask you, Chris Wilde. Half the country, perhaps, estimate, don't like Nigel Farage. Many consider him to be a divisive figure that has harmed the country. Do you think he should be in the House of Commons?
No, absolutely not. I was, especially today when I was shopping for olive oil, I had to pay £7 because, you know, he forced everybody to...
I've got a solution there for you. Stop being so bloody middle class.
I'm not middle class.
What's wrong with sunflower oil? Have you never heard of crisp and dry?
Yeah. Listen, he's a character...
Or not the butter.
He's a character, love him. I don't like him any less than I like Piers Morgan. He's a character. I think he's, you know, he's like the cat who wants to fish but doesn't want to get his feet wet. He doesn't belong in politics. He's very rich. Go off and retire.
OK, well, harsh words there. Mark Littlewood, I just think for a diversity of opinion within the House of Commons, a few disruptors would serve our democracy well, including Nigel, including Diane Abbott and others. What's your view?
Yeah, you're right, Mark. You want, obviously, a diversity of opinion. But I think in your praise of Nigel, there was one part of your argument I didn't quite follow. Essentially, Farage has been probably the single most influential politician in the UK over the past 10 or 15 years, and he's done that without needing to be an MP. He's going to be a big influence in this campaign without running. It's going to be too late for him to run now. I mean, you mentioned you've got to take your chances, as Borussia Dortmund failed to do last night against Real Madrid, but Farage decided not to turn up on the pitch for the first 45 minutes. That's not a question of not taking your chances. He hasn't been there. And if you're an insurgent party, it's probably now too late. If he were to pick a seat, there'll be no data on where the Reform voters are, no canvassing will have taken place. It takes a long time, even if it's a big national news story, for voters on the ground to recognise that their candidate is Smith or Jones or Farage. But I'll make this prediction for you, Mark. I think Nigel Farage will become an MP in the future, most likely, more likely than not, but probably under Conservative Party colours.
OK, so you think that, maybe enters via a by-election after the election in July, or are you talking 5 years from now?
One or t'other. I think it's quite likely, if Reform don't get a breakthrough this time, that they'll fold into the Conservative.
Well, there you go. What do you think? Should Nigel Farage be in the House of Commons on the 5th of July, the day after the election? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. But next up, will public anger at wokery and political correctness influence the election campaign? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, no-nonsense former government minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne's next.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, folks, it's been a really busy show, and I'll get to your feedback very shortly. I'm so keen to hear what you've got to say about my take at 10 and whether Nigel should run for high office. Should he participate in the general election and seek a seat in the House of Commons? I'll get to your views at 10:30. But first, while the politicians battle it out over NHS spending, police numbers and the cost of living, will any of the parties leverage the so-called culture wars to gain a political advantage? Whether it's a debate over what defines a biological woman, Britain's history, whether it's shameful or glorious, depending on who you ask, patriotism, the flag, or traditional family values, will the public's exasperation with political correctness, or so-called wokery, influence the outcome of the election? Or are there votes in being woke? After all, many argue it just means the pursuit of social justice. Let's get the views of tonight's newsmaker and a veteran of many successful electoral campaigns, former government minister and broadcaster Anne Widdecombe. Anne, millions of Americans have no great love for Donald Trump, but they are absolutely sick of gender ideology in America's schools, or their children being told in class that they're racist because of their skin colour. And they're so keen to end the wokery, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Do you think that we could see a similar impact here in the UK in July?
Oh, yes, I do. And I think that one very telling thing is that the Conservatives made a raft of announcements on equality, inclusion, diversity, all of which were lifted straight from Reform's announcement in its contract with the people. Now, why are they doing that? Because they recognise that it has a resonance. Now, until about, I would say, 18 months ago, when people talked about wokery, the fear that most people had was for free speech. People feared that they couldn't say what they wanted to say and that they had to self-censor. That was the big fear. But over the last year, it shifted. And that fear, yes, is certainly still there. But now people are afraid of something much more proactive, that their children in schools are being taught that there are umpteen, I forget how many they've got. Up
to 100.
Is that it? Different genders. And they're being taught something which their parents regard as wrong and probably dangerously wrong. And so I think the emphasis has shifted. It was, we're not free to say what we like. It's now our children are being taught something which we don't think they should be taught. So yes, I think it's there now. Obviously, there are huge other issues. There's immigration, there's health, there's education, all sorts of things, which are not going to be completely submerged by a wokery argument. but nevertheless it is there. And I think the party which says we've had enough, we've really had enough. We're a free speech party. We're going to stop indoctrination in our schools. I think the party that says that, and Reform has, I think that will play well into the public consciousness of what's going on.
Now, I know Keir Starmer has said that Labour will push back on the excesses of wokery, and I think that Rishi Sunak has tried to cast himself as an anti-woke Prime Minister. But the bottom line, Anne, is that you've got your finger on the pulse. You spend a lot of time with the public. It's in your DNA as a former politician. The public have had enough of this, haven't they? Stifling PC, being afraid of saying the wrong thing or having the wrong opinion, being told what to think all the time.
Yes, I mean, being told what to think is just pure, Orwell 1984 stuff.
Yeah.
It was something that we fought very hard against in the last war. And, we're on the anniversary of D-Day. We should perhaps start remembering that war was being fought for a purpose.
And Anne, trigger warnings at the start of books, Roald Dahl being rewritten. You're a successful published author yourself. You wrote the best-selling The Clematis Tree a few years ago. Was that read by a sensitivity reader before it was published?
No, it most emphatically was not. And in those days, there wouldn't have been any such proposal. That book came out in 2000. But certainly, if I were to submit a manuscript now and the editor said it's got to go to the sensitivity reader, I should say, give it back, I'll find another publisher.
Most definitely. Anne, can we talk about political labelling? Because Sir Keir Starmer has said that he's a socialist, but his shadow chancellor, his right-hand woman, Rachel Reeves, has said, no, she's not a socialist. She is a social democrat. But whether it's socialist or conservative, do these terms have any meaning anymore?
Well, they used to. Of course, they used to have a very strong meaning. So when you say, do they have that meaning anymore, I think the emphasis is on the anymore. I mean, we once all knew what a conservative was, what a socialist was, and what the vast difference between them was. And really, since Blair, that difference has been pretty blurred. But hang on, Jeremy Corbyn would not deny that he was a socialist, and Keir Starmer was supporting Jeremy Corbyn not that long ago. So presumably he felt a bit socialist then. And he says he is a socialist, so please could he define it so that we can know exactly what it means.
Anne, last but not least, what is your appraisal of the election campaign so far? Look, I know that you're supporting Reform UK. We've got 6 weeks of very strict impartiality on the channel now, a diversity of views. You love Reform, no problem. Some of my viewers and listeners love the Tories, the Lib Dems, the Green, Labour, SNP, Plaid Cymru, you name it. But what's your overview of the campaign? I mean, has anyone set the world alight?
Well, I think it's been profoundly uninspiring as far as the major parties go. I think Nigel Farage certainly got noticed when he went to Dover and made his pronouncements there on immigration. But there's been the usual raft of gimmickry. We've seen it. I mean, I don't know what Ed Davey is doing. I mean, he's like a kid let loose at Alton Towers or something. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. But we've had the usual gimmicks. And, I think people are actually quite tired of them. And I think what people want to hear are straightforward statements, straightforward arguments. And they also want to know what can't be done as well as what can be done, because people associate general elections with politicians making a lot of promises which they themselves must have doubts about being able to keep. So I think they're looking for trustworthiness, and I don't think they're finding it in the major parties.
Well, Anne Widdecombe, you are going to be an unmissable voice in the countdown to the election every Sunday night here on Mark Dolan Tonight, the jewel in the crown of the show. Anne, we'll see you in a week's time. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my pundits. Plus, in the last word, all the election latest from Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie. Plus, Rupert Murdoch marries at the age of 93 for the 5th time. Can you find love later in life? All of that and the papers and the pundits. See you in 2.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we've seen plenty of fine weather over the weekend. However, this week is going to be turning more unsettled and a little bit cooler. For today, though, we have had high pressure dominating the weather over the UK, but we have had this frontal system move into the northwest and a slight squeeze in those isobars too, so turning damp and rather windy. It is gradually going to be clouding over from the north through into this evening, staying clearest for longest across the south. And we will start to see some outbreaks of rain and drizzle continue to move their way into northwestern areas. So turning a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the south, but for most a rather mild night and most places not dropping below double digits. So to start on Monday, there will be a little bit of brightness in the south, but as I say, we'll gradually cloud over through the course of the morning, staying largely dry though. However, we will start to see some rain and drizzle move its way into northwestern England, northern parts of Wales, and quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, still with that rain and drizzle, but brightening up through the morning across parts of Aberdeenshire, and there will be some sunny spells across the Northern Isles, but plenty of showers in between those spells of sunshine. Overall on Monday, it is going to be a rather cloudy picture, still with those spots of rain and drizzle in the northwest. By the time we reach the afternoon, it may brighten up a little bit across central and southern UK, but most of the sunshine is going to be across Scotland. However, quite a blustery day on offer there, so that will just take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. But in those sheltered spots where you catch the sunshine, it should still be feeling warm. Now, as we head into Tuesday, we are going to see a bit of a change. Further rain moving in from the northwest, quite blustery and plenty of showers behind too. However, it will still be staying dry across the south and southeast and still feeling warm where you do catch any sunnier spells, but cooler across Scotland, particularly in that wind. And as we head into next week, fairly unsettled, largely dry in the south, but it is going to be feeling largely cool.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's just gone 10:30, so it's time for this. That's right, tomorrow's eagerly awaited front pages. Daily Express, a really tragic story. He inspired the nation. Rob Burrow dies at 41 after motor neurone disease battle. Also, PM pledges law change to protect women's rights. Well, there you go. We're just talking about whether wokery or alleged wokery will feature in the election campaign. There you have it. Next up, the Metro. And Russian behind Wembley chaos, the hand of vlog. Fans offered £260,000 to invade the pitch at the Champions League final. It was an unedifying spectacle. The Independent, Diane Abbott, Labour veteran, will stand for her party after a row over her selection. Rugby star and motor neurone disease campaigner Rob Burrow dies is the other story. And hospital sex abuse scandal. NHS fails to carry out any actions urged by the Jimmy Savile inquiry. Daily Telegraph, congratulations to Rupert Murdoch, who marries for the fifth time lucky, at the tender age of 93. I'll be speaking to one of his former employees, Kelvin McKenzie, in just a few minutes. Also, Rishi Sunak, I'll change the law to protect women's spaces. Starmer is the knight that won't fight as he declines BBC debates. The BBC announced a slew of election debates, but Sir Keir Starmer has already declined to take part in one of them. Also, here's a worrying story. Cancer rise in the young, fuelled by obesity. And last but not least for now, the Daily Star. England's secret Euros weapon and Rob Burrow, 1982 to 2024, the bravest man in Britain. Rugby legend dies aged 41 after battling motor neurone disease. Well, let's get more on that because Rob Burrow was a one-club man who played for Leeds Rhinos for 16 years. He managed to raise over £20 million for the Rob Burrow Foundation after being diagnosed in 2019, and the Leeds Marathon was launched in his honour in 2022. For reaction to this very sad news, I'm delighted to welcome legendary TV sport anchor Chris Scudder. Chris, lovely to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Lovely to see you, Mark.
I wish I met you under happier circumstances. First of all, this guy was very good at rugby. Tell me about his sporting achievements.
Yeah, I mean, he said, I think it was 17 years rather than 16. But I mean, he's one of the greats of the game, without a doubt. You know, rugby league doesn't have the profile of rugby union. Obviously, it does in the north, but, you know, he is as the Rugby Football League tonight said, he has transcended his sport through this tragic illness. Won all there was to win, really. 8 Super League Grand Finals, 3 World Club Challenges, a couple of Challenge Cups as well. They now name the Grand Final Man of the Match after him, as indeed you mentioned the Leeds Marathon, all named after this guy for his incredible work. I mean, you just cannot imagine, you know, the great contrast between a sportsman, you know, at the height of his powers, physically fantastic, being reduced to nothing.
Because he wasn't long retired when he got the diagnosis.
A couple of years after, yeah. So he would have been, what, 37 or something like that, you know, which is not old. But in rugby league, which is a tough sport, you know, they probably know when to get out.
What kind of a player was he? Was he tenacious? Was he athletic?
Yeah, he was, yeah. I mean, he was, you know, he's one of the smaller guys, but I mean, he, you know, he had a huge heart. Interesting, the Prince of Wales tonight saying, you know, he calls him a legend with a huge heart. And I think that's captured it. And this is one of those stories that really does transcend sport, because it's a real people story, isn't it? I mean, Burrow himself said when he got the illness, he didn't want anyone to pity him. That was a very gritty northern rugby league thing to say. And he said, as long as I'm able-bodied, he knew what was coming to him, but as long as he felt able-bodied, he didn't want anyone to pity him and just to, you know, let him live his life as a normal person. But of course, you can't do that. And as we've seen, you know, and the culmination of that was the Leeds Marathon, the Rob Burrow Marathon. I mean, one of the saddest sights I've ever seen, I think, when Kevin Sinfield, his teammate, carried him. You know, I mean, I think I wasn't the only one with a tear in the kitchen that morning. And, you know, just a frail, incapacitated piece of humanity who used to be a great sporting icon. You know, it's a terrible, terrible illness. And we've seen it with others. Doddy Weir, the rugby union player, huge guy in comparison. The one that really stuck with me was Fernando Rickson, the Rangers footballer. He was one of the first ones, to mid 2015-ish, roughly. He was a fullback, a Dutch, and he, you know, to see him, he was one of the first sportsmen, really, who you saw in that condition, and everyone was so shocked. And then, of course, Rob Burrow has really taken it and raised so much money, and motor neurone disease now is so well known because of him and by Kevin Sinfield. And listen, he should be knighted for what he has done, raising all that money. You know, 7 ultra marathons in 7 days. You know, a real inspiration. I've met him before. I never met Rob, but I've met Kevin. He's a real, very down-to-earth guy. Continues to raise money, raise awareness, and you know, I think he'll be a Sir in the future. Should be too.
A sad day for sport and a sad day for the country.
It is, yeah. It's you know,
we talk about greatest Britons all the time, don't we? But and Rob Burrow never played the victim, really. He had this awful disease, but he continued to make public appearances. He didn't go into hiding. And he's got a twin legacy now, sporting legacy and a legacy of raising awareness and an enormous amount of money, as you said, for this disease.
15-20 million pounds, something like
Astonishing.
that. A quote from the Motor Neurone Disease Association. Incredibly grateful to Rob and his family for helping to raise awareness, which is the main thing. And as Kevin Sinfield himself said, this is not about, you know, he can run marathons and be totally exhausted and almost wreck his body, but he can recover from that. When you've got motor neurone disease, you cannot do that. And as he said, it's all about raising awareness, raising money, because money shifts the dial and changes things. That's the words of Kevin Sinfield. And, you know, that awareness will be raised, and there'll be a lot of coverage of this in the media. And, you know, for sportsmen to end the way it did for him. horrible sight.
Yeah, well, Chris, always love watching you on the box. Thank you for coming in, and we'll catch up again soon. My thanks there to legendary sports anchor Chris Scudder. Let's have another look at some of your papers. And we've got the Times in now, hot off the press. Oh, I see you've got the Telegraph there. Well, let's see what the Telegraph are saying. And I'll be honest with you, they've been watching Mark Dolan tonight because we wondered whether wokery would feature in the election as a theme. Extreme political correctness. Sunak, I will change the law to protect women's spaces is the story there. And do we have the Times? OK, we'll get the Times very shortly. By the way, one other story there that's of deep concern in the Telegraph. Cancer rise in the young, fuelled by obesity. OK, well, look, let's... oh, there we go. And now we have the Times. Thank you so much for that. And a picture of such a fine man, Rob Burrow there, rugby league legend, CBE, died today of motor neurone disease, aged just 41. That is no age. And we've been robbed of a true sporting legend, and our condolences go to his family. May he rest in peace. Cancer rise in under 50s blamed on poor diet, and Tory vow to end abuse of gender laws by predators. There you go. OK, folks, well, let's get reaction from my fantastic pundits tonight. I'm delighted to have the brilliant political commentator Mark Littlewood. We also have campaigner and author Chris Wilde and former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Well, there you go. That didn't take long, did it, Chris Wilde? We wondered, in the company of Anne Widdecombe, whether political correctness and wokery would become a feature of the election, the so-called culture wars. Well, there you have it in the Times. Tory vow to end the abuse of gender laws by predators. And the Telegraph, Sunak, I will change the law to protect women's spaces. Now, we've seen a lot of debate, haven't we, about Keir Starmer, whether or not he knows how to define a biological woman. This is a clear line in the sand from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, it's a taboo subject for anyone, isn't it? It's a really difficult one, because where everybody's scared to say the right thing or the wrong thing. Everyone's scared to have an opinion on this. You know, what is the right thing to do? I had this conversation the other day with my daughter, and I asked her if we should be comfortable to share a toilet with males in that toilet, or just different sexes, and she said she wouldn't. And as a father as well, you've got to think about these things, and I do get it, and we are changing with the times, and the world's got to change with it. But surely we've got to have a stance on this, haven't we? There's got to be a line somewhere.
Well, yes. I mean, do you think... Well, this is quite clear that Rishi Sunak sees votes in it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the front page of the Telegraph and the Times, Claire. Do the public care? I mean, you could argue that we've got a cost-of-living crisis, energy bills through the roof, that we've got bigger fish to fry. What do you think about this?
I've been out on the campaign trail recently. Can I tell you the number of times that this has been brought up has been a big fat zero.
Zero.
It is an issue, but it is not people's main issue. I think that the majority of the public just want it sorted out. Women want to have women's spaces, and I'm all for that, and I'm really pleased to see what Rishi Sunak is finally saying. But as an elective sort of premise, it's not up there. It really, really isn't. I think most people just find the whole subject complicated, not their thing. They don't really want to talk about it. And it is, it is
you
almost
think it's
one
a
of
dog
those
whistle?
dog whistles.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I really do.
Mark, I think that we're about 5 years behind America. I think that in 2029 it will be the hot topic, but it hasn't quite sort of arrived on these shores just yet fully. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I've been on the campaign trail too, and you're right, Claire, it's not the first thing that comes up on somebody's lips. But I think it does feed into a view that the establishment, Parliament, the elite are detached and weird as far as ordinary people are concerned. So in some ways, it's gobsmacking, isn't it? The Prime Minister is going to come out and confirm that sex is biological. I mean, is tomorrow's announcement going to be, and the law of gravity exists, and, and the sun rises and the sun sets?
Oh, that kind of bigotry will get you cancelled. Be very careful.
I don't think we should dance around this. This is not to say that transgender people should be treated unfairly, but sex is biological. It's completely ridiculous.
We seem to
that
have
we're
gone
allowing
down
circumstances in which 13-year-old girls, are sharing their bathrooms or their changing rooms with some bloke called Gary in his 50s.
In the name of inclusion.
But we've gone down a rabbit hole with this, and unfortunately, I think politicians have just made it worse by trying to please everybody.
Yeah, of course.
and try to appeal to absolutely everybody, which you can't do. And it's a really basic fact.
And you can take a firm line without being bigoted.
You can,
right?
absolutely. You can agree that trans people exist, they have the right to exist, and they absolutely do. But you can also agree that women have the right to a safe space.
Yeah, quite.
OK, well, listen, we've got more front pages to come, let me tell you. Plus, Rupert Murdoch has got married for the 5th time at the age of 93. I'll be speaking to the man that used to work for him, Kelvin McKenzie, Fleet Street legend, with also the inside track on the election. Who does Kelvin think has had a good week so far? See you in 2.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Washington Post estimates that $50 billion was pledged by giant corporate donors over the last few years. Mega funders like George Soros, who dropped $220 million into fancy non-profits, and a lot of ordinary people sent in small donations. So where did all this money go? I mean, small organisations were raising insane amounts of money just through QR codes, sticking them up on posters and on the internet. On social media, and getting huge amounts of money. Where did it go? Well, we can see that quite a lot of it got spent on fun stuff for the organisers. So, I mean, Patrice Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter, was we know that she bought, or Black Lives Matter on her behalf bought this luxury villa. That she's like, oh, we're going to use it for community workshops or whatever. Yeah, that and living in, and also her brother's business got paid, nearly $1 million.
Security.
And her baby daddy got paid nearly $1 million to provide creative consultancy services.
I'm thinking about, as you said at the top here, finally journalists are looking into this, and it's ridiculous that this amount of money hasn't really been explored, because when they did say, hey, what have you done with this money, of course what she said was basically, you're being massively racist, how dare you?
You're racist, look over there.
Yeah, essentially. And then some people went, oh, OK, yeah, sorry, we didn't mean to question you. So the figures that have been raised are astounding. And, yeah, as some of the stuff is just mental, like, and multi-million-pound homes, dollar homes.
But it's good, so the money got spent on having fun instead of, like, it would have just been, like, annoying community projects to create more racism.
Yeah. What they're really not ready for, the media,
lives.
they're still calling it the killing of George Floyd. Many people think he died of an OD. That's the next level they're not ready for.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, let's have a look. Have we got any more papers? Well, let's have a look at the Daily Mail. Yes, we do. Thank you very much, James. And there you go, those culture wars. This programme very much ahead of the curve. We were talking about the culture wars with Anne Widdecombe. Will they feature in the election? Well, hey presto, Daily Mail. Sex is a fact of biology. Rishi Sunak tonight pledged to rewrite the equality laws to define sex as a biological fact if he wins the election. And Murdoch, 93, ties the knot with his 5th wife. The Guardian now, care agencies accused of exploiting foreign workers. And Labour to shine a light on Sunak's hedge fund. Rishi Sunak must face questions about the fortune he earned at a hedge fund that engineered a deal at the heart of the financial crash, Labour has said, as it prepares to launch its first big attack on the Prime Minister before the election debates. Zelensky's warning to Trump over support for Ukraine, and Rob Burrow, 1982 to 2004 rugby league legend, who suffered motor neurone disease, tragically passed away today at the age of 41. There he is, pictured alongside his wife, Lindsay. Our heart goes out to her and the family for what they're going through tonight. The Labour plan for softer Brexit deal, too ambitious. EU insiders warn, well, blimey, if that's not an exclusive, I don't know what is. Sir Keir Starmer's hopes of striking a new relationship with the European Union after winning power would mean signing up to Brussels rules that he has already ruled out. Labour has set out Leaver-friendly red lines on Brexit, but a closer relationship. OK. Well, look, it's time now for the last word and for reaction to the big stories of the day alongside my top pundits. I'm delighted to welcome the former editor of The Sun newspaper, media entrepreneur, the founder of TalkSport Radio, as well as many other hits. It is Kelvin MacKenzie. Kelvin, good to see you. Listen, let me get your instant reaction to that story in the newspaper. Labour plan for softer Brexit deal, too ambitious, EU insiders warn. Do you think that Brexit is safe in the hands of Labour?
It's going to change. And it's quite clear that all the mood music coming out of the Labour Party, without them saying it, because they don't want to have a huge Brexit debate ahead of an election because they think it might damage them. But once they get the other side of it, if they're the winners, and the polls seem to indicate that they're 20 points in front currently, then I think that is going to be something that does happen. And where I do think that they have got a following wind on that is if they go over to that 18 to 30 idea of allowing youngsters from Europe to come here and our youngsters to go there, I think that will appeal to the 18 to 30-year-olds. As long as it doesn't mean that there's a whole load of other stuff thrown in, if there is a reasonable movement between youngsters, I would have thought that would be quite a good thing.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, so after all, you know, we're not there to stop. We're not there to stop our youngsters from wanting to spend 2 years in Germany or 3 years in Latvia or somewhere like that. And that was never the point. I mean, the truth about the matter was we were told, by the way, and I voted for it, that we were going to secure our borders. Actually, we've got worse borders today than ever. And when you put this to Nigel, he said yes, he said we haven't done it properly. But you know, this is now what? It's 8 years, and it's 5 years since the election. It's an absolute shocker. The people of this country have been absolutely let down, right? And the load of old cobblers that Starmer's talking about, oh, we're going to do something. When you say to him, well, what are you going to do, and how many are going to be pushed back? He said, oh, well, we're not getting into the numbers. All the politicians of our country have actually let us down. It's been shocking, frankly.
Indeed, of course, Labour clear that they do have a plan to stop the votes. But as you say, Kelvin, we'll find out whether they can, should they win. What about your former boss, Rupert Murdoch, marries for the 5th time at the age of 93? First of all, a prenup will have been involved. As long as your arm, I would have thought.
There would be a prenup, post-nup. There'll be what happens if I die, what happens if you die, what happens if I dump you for somebody else, what happens if you dump me. Honestly, the lawyers would have absolutely cleaned up, because they always do clean up. I was with him on a boat when when the Deng dynasty went south, right? He was in a shocking state, honestly, really upset. And the only times I ever know Rupert's upset is over money. So I suspect that Wendy did rather well out of it. But the funny thing was that Deng was actually at the wedding at that vineyard that
Jerry Hall.
No, Wendy Deng was at the
today.
wedding.
She was at this weekend. That's quite something. The funny thing is, Kelvin, you know the man well. You served him with distinction as the editor of The Sun newspaper. You made it the media force that it became. Yes, he's a tough businessman, but he seems to be an old romantic as well.
Well, yes. I mean, I've said it. I've seen it said. Look, the one thing I do know about him is whoever is his wife has to travel with him. That was an expression he used to me, which means they have to give up their lives to him, right? And you know, if you spend morning, noon, and night with the missus, you have to wonder about how long that's going to last. And Rupert, after a while, he gets tired of them. After all, he dumped Jerry Hall. by text, right? Which I thought was a good use of technology. But the truth about the matter is, I've seen, he's never said this to me, but I've seen it said that members of his family believe that he always marries them if he makes love to them, right? And so basically he's made love to 5 women in 93 years. And if that's the case, then he's probably done worse than you.
Yeah, honestly, well, I've been married once, so I think that'll tell you everything you need to know, Kelvin. Stay there. Let's bring in my pundits. We've got Mark Littlewoods and Claire and Chris. Very briefly, Mark, love at 92. Are you persuaded?
Well, what an absolute genius Rupert Murdoch is. I mean, you said, Mark, that I think he's an old romantic. As Kelvin pointed out, I think if you dump somebody by text, I'm not sure I'd actually describe you as that romantic, but good luck to him. This guy has been pretty much the most successful man in Western media for decades now. I wish him all the best with how many years he's got left. And look, Kelvin's right that, you know, God knows how many lawyers have been involved, but this man's got enough money to get married 6 times, you know, not just 5.
I think he's a prize catch, which just leaves Kelvin. Kelvin, listen, we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Right.
Fleet Street legend Kelvin McKenzie will speak soon. And my top pundits loved your company. Thank you for joining me this weekend. I'm back on Friday at 8. Well done to the team. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we've seen plenty of fine weather over the weekend. However, this week is going to be turning more unsettled and a little bit cooler. For today, though, we have had high pressure dominating the weather over the UK, but we have had this frontal system move into the northwest and a slight squeeze in those isobars too, so turning damp and rather windy. It is gradually going to be clouding over from the north through into this evening, staying clearest for longest across the south. And we will start to see some outbreaks of rain and drizzle continue to move their way into northwestern areas. So turning a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the south, but for most a rather mild night and most places not dropping below double digits. So to start on Monday, there will be a little bit of brightness in the south, but as I say, we'll gradually cloud over through the course of the morning, staying largely dry though. However, we will start to see some rain and drizzle move its way into northwestern England, northern parts of Wales, and quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, still with that rain and drizzle, but brightening up through the morning across parts of Aberdeenshire, and there will be some sunny spells across the Northern Isles, but plenty of showers in between those spells of sunshine. Overall on Monday, it is going to be a rather cloudy picture, still with those spots of rain and drizzle in the northwest. By the time we reach the afternoon, it may brighten up a little bit across central and southern UK, but most of the sunshine is going to be across Scotland. However, quite a blustery day on offer there, so that will just take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. But in those sheltered spots where you catch the sunshine, it should still be feeling warm. Now, as we head into Tuesday, we are going to see a bit of a change. Further rain moving in from the northwest, quite blustery and plenty of showers behind too. However, it will still be staying dry across the south and southeast and still feeling warm where you do catch any sunnier spells, but cooler across Scotland, particularly in that wind. And as we head into next week, fairly unsettled, largely dry in the south, but it is going to be feeling largely cool.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Princess of Wales